Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee and began to be grieved and agitated. Then he said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and stay awake with me." And going a little further, he threw himself on the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want." Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So could you not stay awake with me 1 hour? Stay awake and pray, that you may not come into this time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again he went away for the second time and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." Again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up. Let us be going. See, my betrayer is near at hand." we live in troubled times. These are difficult days. We find ourselves separated from loved ones. We find ourselves separated from the places of worship. We find ourselves separated from the sources of our livelihood. These are difficult days. We worry, we fret, we are anxious. But we find ourselves right now in the company of Jesus, who was like us in all things but sin. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he too was anxious and worried, and fearful. So fearful that he sweated blood and thrice turned to his father and said, "Take this cup away from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." Jesus understands our fears. In his presence, in the presence of one who has experienced what we are going through now, we find comfort. He brings us comfort. He asks us to be still and know that He is with us. That all will be well. His presence, all is well with our soul. Darkness will give way to light. We know this today, that the resurrection will happen. But 2000 years ago, the disciples of Jesus were not so sure. In fact, they could barely comprehend what was going on. Judas had betrayed Jesus. And Scripture tells us that darkness had fallen. Peter, James, and John were tired. And yet the Lord chose the three of them to come and pray in a place that He so often went. Gethsemane was an olive press filled with olive trees. The faint lights of Jerusalem could be seen from Gethsemane. In between was the Kidron Valley, plunged in darkness. And Jesus was agonizing. I too agonize, Lord. I too have decisions to make. Decisions that can affect my family, decisions that can affect relationships, decisions that can affect my church and my community. I agonize, Lord. Uncertainty makes these decisions even more agonizing. And as I sit in the Garden of Gethsemane, overlooking the Kidron Valley and the city of Jerusalem, I am reminded, Lord, that your servant David once agonized too. When his own son, Absalom, turned against him. David fled the city of Jerusalem and walked through the Kidron Valley. He was agonizing. Should he turn against his son? Or should there simply be peace? And as David walked through the Kidron Valley, he found you, Lord, when he said, "Though I should walk in the valley of darkness, I shall not be afraid. For you are there with your crook and your staff. With these you give me comfort." The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Fresh and green are the pastures where he gives me repose. Near restful waters he leads me. He revives my drooping spirit. The Lord is my shepherd. That is all I want. Tonight, Lord, we too walk in the Kidron Valley. To the left is your holy city of Jerusalem. To the right is the Garden of Gethsemane. As I walk through this valley of darkness, I know that somewhere up on the hillside, somewhere up in the Garden of Gethsemane, you are there, Lord, praying for me, agonizing with me. And lo, should I walk in this darkness, I shall not be afraid. For you are with me.
nothing I shall want. Yes, the Lord is my shepherd. There is nothing I shall want. The Lord has prepared such a banquet for me. Surely goodness and shall follow after me in the Lord's own house. Shall I dwell all the days of my life? The Lord is my shepherd. There is nothing I shall want. Yes, the Lord is my shepherd. There is nothing I shall want.
While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived with him, and with him was a large crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him." At once he came up to Jesus and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you are here to do." Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and arrested him. Suddenly, one of those with Jesus put his hand on his sword, drew it, and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back into its place. For all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then could the scriptures be fulfilled, which say it must happen in this way?" At that hour, Jesus said to the crowds, "Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as though I were some bandit? Day after day, I sat in the temple teaching. You did not arrest me. But all this has taken place so that the scriptures of the prophets may be fulfilled." Then all the disciples deserted and fled. And now you're alone, Jesus. Alone in the hands of those who hate you. Your 12 closest friends, now 11, have deserted you. The blind, the deaf, the lame, the dumb, the leper, the sick, all those that you healed. None of them are here. The crowds that followed you in the temple, on the Mount of Beatitudes, the crowds that sat with you as you preached to them from the boat, from the lake of Galilee. What about the 5,000 whom you fed? I feel the same way, Lord, sometimes. I feel alone, abandoned, deserted. I followed your path. I was good to others. I forgave. I gave. And yet, Lord, so often in my own hour of need, I felt abandoned. I was alone. Anger and bitterness filled my heart because more than anything else, I felt let down. Let down for doing good. But you too, Lord, were let down. And you only were good. I had to make an effort to be good. You were a good God, always. And while the crowds, the 12, the multitudes, all deserted you in the Garden of Gethsemane, you continue to feel the presence of your Father in heaven, because into His hands you surrendered all. Teach me, my Lord, to surrender too. Teach me to surrender negativity. Teach me to surrender hatred. Teach me to surrender my lust for revenge. Teach me to surrender, Lord, just as you surrendered your will to the Father. Not my will be done, but yours. those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, in whose house the scribes and the elders had gathered. But Peter was following at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest. And going inside, he sat with the guards in order to see how this would end. Now the chief priests and the whole council were looking for false testimony against Jesus so that they might put him to death. Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. A servant girl came to him and said, "You also were with Jesus the Galilean." He denied, "I do not know what you are talking about." When he went out to the porch, another servant girl saw him and said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." Again he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." After a little while, the bystanders came up and said to Peter, "Certainly you are one of them. Your accent betrays you." Then he began to curse, and he swore an oath, "I do not know the man." At that moment, the cock crowed. Then Peter remembered what Jesus had said, "Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly. That, Lord, was your choice to be the leader of your church. A man who denied you not once, not twice, 3 times. And when I look at Peter, Lord, I look at myself. Why is it that you always choose people who have so many failings? Why not choose someone more worthy, someone stronger, someone better, someone with greater character, someone who can speak better? Your very choice, Lord, to be leader of your church seems so much like me. I want to serve. I want to love. I want to be with you. But when the going gets tough, I deny you, I desert you, I betray you. Yet you chose me. In my own little way, you chose me to serve your church. As an altar server, or maybe as a lector, maybe as a cantor, or a member of the choir. You chose me to be in the youth group or in the parish council, as an usher, in the SVP, as a sodality member, as an animator. As your priest, as a seminarian, as a bishop, you choose the weak, but you make them strong. So help us, Lord, not to be disheartened, because like Peter, we too failed you. Give us that opportunity again, Lord, when we can say, like Peter, to you, I love you, Lord. You know I do. I may not be the best, Lord, but in your eyes, I have a mission and I have a purpose. And though, like Peter, I may fail, you gaze at me and you lift me up. Use me, Lord, in the way you think best. To serve my family, to serve my community, to serve my church. Make me, Lord, a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, let me bring your pardon.
Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. Oh, Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. Oh, Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. It isn't pardoning that we are pardoned, in giving to all men that we receive, and in dying that we're born to eternal.
O Lord, God of my salvation, when at night I cry out in your presence, let my prayer come before you. Incline your ear to my cry, for my soul is full of troubles, and my life draws near to Sheol. I am counted among those who go down to the pit. I am like those who have no help, like those forsaken among the dead, like the slain that lie in the grave, like those who you remember no more, for they are cut off from your hand. You have put me in the depths of the pit, in the regions dark and deep. Your rod lies heavy upon me, and you overwhelm me with your waves. Psalm 88. And then Jesus was lowered in the dungeon.